So I hope everyone had a nice Shabbos. A Maamar Chassidus isn't just pleasurable reading and even pleasurable understanding. The purpose of a Maamar is to use it in your daily service to God. The Rabbeim, the Lubavitcher Rabbeim, the Rebbes, they didn't say Chassidus. First, they said what we're learning. Before it was committed to writing, it was said. Like I told you in one of the last classes, the history. And then they wrote it down. And there was a team, I didn't mention this last time, there was a team of individuals that each Rebbe had called Chayzerim. The word Chayzer means to review. Individuals who had good memories, who memorized what the Rebbe said, and then amongst themselves, they would review what the Rebbe said, what they thought the Rebbe said, and then until our Rebbe, but the other 6 Rebbes before, they would go to the Rebbe and tell the Rebbe what they think they remember of the Maamar. And the Rebbe would actually sometimes correct them because they said, I did say this, I didn't say this, things like that, okay? But they were called Chayzerim, or the singular is Chozer. So in our time, Rabbi Yochanan was like the chief Chozer of the Rebbe, okay? But that's all an intellectual endeavor. The purpose is to take this Maamar, for example, that we're learning, and to use it on Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur, particularly on Rosh Hashana, because this Maamar is about Rosh Hashana. So that's a general note that's important to never forget, because otherwise it becomes just an exercise of intellect, and as wonderful as it might be, it doesn't have permanence. Okay? Let's go now to page 28. V'hinei. Everything that we said before. We said before the end of the previous chapter that there's a court case takes place, and when there's a court case takes place, there's the prosecutor and the defense attorney. And the Rebbe made a point of saying, and this is important to remember, that at the end the judge says, now you, defendant, get up yourself and plead your case. So as much shalom as we have aides, malachim, defendants, defense attorneys to defend us, what's most impactful, important is your own defense. And the Rebbe said, you might come to the judge and say, thinking to yourself, I don't have a great defense. You know what the Rebbe said you should do? You should be melamed schus. You should bring up schusim, merits, things that you did, and appeal to the judge. Give me another chance. Yes, I did goof up this way. I did make a mistake. I take responsibility, but I'm worthy of another chance. Why? And you list and it's okay. It's okay to do that, because we're only human. Good morning, Hillel. We're only human, and we have weaknesses, and therefore it's okay. So this is what we learned at the end of last chapter. So now let's continue. So just as we discussed in detail these issues, the Zeu Vayihi Hayoim, he quoted earlier in the Maamar, was that day. The Rosh Hashana hu Hayom shehuchan lemishpa v'din. Rosh Hashana is the day that's been organized for judgment. Uvoy bayoim boim rachmana litzlan, and on that day, God forbid, we know they do come, and we need God's mercy. hamikatrigim, the prosecutors, hatevim mishpat al ma'aseh bnei Adam. They demand judgment for man's activities. You can't just do what you want. If you do something, we're going to keep, God is keeping score. And therefore, hey, you enjoyed yourself on this and this day and this month. Well, tell me, give an account, justify your acts. As the rabbis say, that the sages say in the Gemara of Baba Basra, Yeredu Masa, the Satan, the Satan, he descends, he comes down, Umasa, and he confuses. And look how he does it. Good morning, Elio. Shahasatan, Shehu Malach, the Satan who is a bad angel, right? The Satan, it's not the Christian idea of Satan, Mark.
Yes,
it's the Jewish idea of an angel. We have angels. We have good angels and we have bad angels. So the Rebbe says, the Satan hu malach hara. The Satan is a bad angel. Yered lamata, he descends below, umases abriyos, and he confuses people in Yiddish. Eretain, he convinces them, mention the person. Unfirte marop van derech, and he makes him go astray. In other words, one of the al-chaits that we're going to say Yom Kippur is what? Al-chait with the Yetzer Hara. Forgive me for allowing the Yetzer Hara, to the evil inclination, to make me sin. So the question that is asked, every aveira, every transgression is done by the Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Hara. So what is the specific al-chait? Right? In other words, stealing, gossiping, cheating, not respecting parents, on and on. Why? Who's behind it all? The Yetzer Hara. So why do I need to have? So if I'm already saying, forgive me for this sin of not honoring my parents, of course it's understood that it's because of the Yetzer Hara. So why do we have to have a specific al-chait for the Yetzer Hara? And the explanation brought in the holy in Sfarim, and it's also kind of a tradition, that there's certain things that even the Yetzer Hara wouldn't think of doing. This mishagas, even the evil inclination, it would never enter his mind to make you do this. It's like out of the pale. And nevertheless you do it. That's because you have schlepped your Yetzer Hara into a place where it itself wouldn't go. Now, why do I say this? Because the Rebbe says here, Yeredu Masa, the Yetzer Hara, efirte maropim derech. He leads a stray man. Ho'emes ve'oilo umargizoi. So the Yetzer Hara causes a man confusion, transgression, and then the same Yetzer Hara ascends to God and says, you see what he did? You see what he did? Oilo Margizeh still goes on the evil that he does. Then the Yetzer Hara Atzmai Teveya Dino Mishpadas Adam, he charges man for his transgression. Chas v'sholem b'din kosher rachman litzlan. This person deserves a bad judgment. Hinei kashem shebedinu mishpat lamata. After the judge hears those that speak positive about the person, okay, defend yourself. Get up and defend yourself. Cain, Michelle, we're in the middle of a class. We'll do this later, please. Cain, who bedinu mishpat, the Rosh Hashana, so too with the judgment of the Rosh Hashana, shenosan reshus le'adam le'lamed zchus al atzmai. Every man is given on Rosh Hashana the opportunity to speak positive about himself, about his family and his friends. I want to say everyone knows the famous the story of Vart from the Chofetz Chaim, right? Self-deprecation is a form of Lashon Hara. Self-deprecation means when you speak bad about yourself, you're gossiping.
What if it's a humorous way?
In a humorous way, you're always allowed to make fun. You're allowed to do. That's humor, you know what I'm saying? But if a person comes down hard on himself and he says, you know why I'm having this issue? You know why my kids are having this issue? And starts blaming himself, his past, his present. It's not a Yiddish way. It's not the Jewish way. The Gemara does say, Elio, I can't see your face. Do you mind moving into the... The Gemara does say that Chosh Bereishay, if someone has a headache, doesn't feel well, you fashish b'maisa Hillel, check out your actions. But that's not a contradiction. That means look what needs improvement, that be improvement. But can someone say that this issue that I have or my family has, my kids, etc., etc., is because I did this and this sin? If someone tells you if someone says that they know that's the reason, stay far away from them. The Rebbe, I never heard the Rebbe ever speak that way. Never. Yeah, the Rebbe spoke about Chazal. Chazal say, that if you're involved with these transgressions, the world will have this issue. That's Chazal. That's the rabbis, the sages of the Talmud. But this idea, and I'm for a moment going off on a tangent, but it's important. This idea of, I don't want to say, Sephardic Mekubalim, but, people out there, this happened because this happened. You know that in 1948 or 49, the Satmar Rav, Reb Yoel Teitelbaum, the original Satmar Rebbe, he went to see the Rebbe Rayatz, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the sixth Rebbe. And he said to the previous Rebbe that he believes that the Holocaust was a punishment for the secularism in Europe at the time. And there was secularism. In our own families, I could tell you, I had many relatives from Poland, from Warsaw area, and I have pictures of that time, and you could see they removed their beards, they already, grew their hair, they didn't wear yarmulkes, and these were coming from parents. If I showed you a picture, you'll fall down. With a father, a beard down here, holding a Gemara. I have a picture on my phone, because it shows you what was going on. The father is this Taira Yid who's, what we call Orthodox, frum, involved, and the kids are modern. And I understand, poverty was rampant. I'm not going to go into these details. The point is, the Satmar Rebbe said, you know why God sent the Holocaust? As retribution, as punishment for the secularism that existed in Hungary, in Germany, in Poland, etc. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, who was already a stroke patient, he said, with his holy words, don't justify God. To the Satmar Rebbe. In other words, we don't understand what happened. We don't want to understand what happened. We don't need to understand what happened. I'm paraphrasing. Okay? But for you to say that you know why Hashem sent the Holocaust, I'm going to say it in my words, is outrageous. The Rebbe didn't say that to him. But it's like, who are you to say that? I'm saying, who are we? One second. It's not about you or I. Who are we as Jews, as people, to say we know Das Elyon, we know God, what God, we don't know. Yes, Elio.
Wasn't that the way that Nevi'im did? Zacharia,
Okay, a Navi is a Navi.
Navi came in.
A Navi, you're right. A Navi is a Navi. When the Satmar Rebbe will be a Navi, we'll deal with it then.
But he could have been saying that this is the reason, but the Frierdiker Rebbe is saying even so, Hashem didn't have to do it in this way.
Right.
So it doesn't mean he was He's contradicting. How many times did the pogroms that was in Poland in 1600s, they said that was because of talking in shul. That's
If the Chazal and the Rabbanim all said it, no problem. So when you say they said, that means to us as Torah students, nothing. You got to show me the sources, and if indeed the rabbis at the time got together, not just one rabbi, and they came out with that edict, no problem. But, it's not 1600s, and it's much later, and a hurricane comes, or a catastrophe comes, and right away people say, it's because of this, and because of that, because of this. In other words, to use something to get you to be better, fine, but don't tell me it's because of this. You don't know it's because of this. The fact that this is wrong, it's wrong. Secularism is wrong. Isms are wrong. Eino chanami. But that's why, like you said, Hillel, God could have done it another way. He chose Dafka this way. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. I really want to get back to the text. All I'm saying is we learned here that that on Rosh Hashana there comes the din of mishpat, and a person should bring schusim to talk about people. In the story I told you last week that the Rebbe mentioned, the Siyam of Sechtas Sukkah, Miriam Bas Bilga, another point that I didn't mention, what's worth mentioning now is that what do we see? The Rebbe didn't say this, but this is, I think, clear. What was it that Take took out Miriam Bas Bilga from the Gilgal for 2,000 years? She was reincarnated and in pain. What took her out? The fact that the Lubavitcher Rebbe 2,000 years later spoke positive about her instead of the traditional Talmudic interpretation that it was negative, that her husband was a sinner, and because of that she was punished. The Rebbe spoke was Melamed Schus on her. What do we see from that? The power of being Melamed Schus. I wrote this in a book on these issues, that when you're Melamed Schus, you can even schlep out a soul that was 2,000 years in a Gilgal. That's how powerful being Melamed Schus. Melamed Schus, Mark, means to bring merits upon a person. To find merits. What good? So the Rebbe says here in the Maamar, do that on Rosh Hashana. And we all have schusim. So bring them up. Let's go. And this is what's expressed in the tefillas, in the prayers, and throughout davening. We talk about saying lots of tilim, Rosh Hashanah, and davening. So in a nutshell, the Rebbe says that's what we want to do. That's what we're doing, and we should be doing through the tefillas, is bringing the schusim. So, for example, when we read in the Musaf with the 10 psukim, the Akedas Yitzchak, the Zechraynos. You remember what Yitzchak did? He gave himself. He was ready to bind himself. That's Melamed, that's his chus, in other words, and he's our forefather. The famous story with the Chayzer of Lublin. Chayzer Lublin was a Rabbi Horowitz. He had a minhag custom that those people that came to raise funds in the town, in the shtetl, if they were his relative, they got double. They got double. He gave them twice as much. He gave a regular meshulach a certain amount, a regular fundraiser a certain amount, and he gave a relative double. Don't ask why that's the way it was. Someone comes and he says to the chayzer, he says, "I'm your relative," and he gives him the amount that he gives to a regular amount. He says, "I'm your relative." He says, "You're my relative. I never saw you. What do you mean you're my relative? I'm your father's cousin's cat's relative. I'm a fourth cousin 6 times removed. I'm your relative." He says, "Oich merakorev." Oich merakorev is Yiddish and Hebrew. Also a relative. Nah, I mean a relative, a brother, a sister, a first cousin, you know. Okay. He gives them only the regular amount. Then it's time for mincha, a davening mincha, and the one leader in the congregation starts doing chazoras hashatz, repeating the Amidah. Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu. We'll say Elokei Avram, the God of Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, the God of Isaac, Elokei Yaakov, the God of Jacob. From the back of the shul, someone says, Eichmer HaKorev. Also a relative. What? And the Chayzer cracked up and he gave him after Mincha double. In other words, if Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov, our patriarchs, we call attention to them because they are our relatives, yeah? And if it's good enough for the rabbis and the congregation and tefillah and prayer, it's good enough for you. So I'm saying, we say here about the Melamed Zchus and through Tchina and sometimes, let's say, connected to a Rebbe, to a tzaddik. The Zchus of the tzaddik should help you. And that's, by the way, one of the ideas of going to the oil, when you get a chance to go to the oil, when you go to a gravesite of a tzaddik, and you have a connection to that tzaddik, you're asking Hashem, look, during the lifetime of this tzaddik, I was connected. I tried learning his Torah, and I tried still learning, and I did his directives. So now I'm asking for a good year. I'm asking for health and parnasa and shidduchim, whatever the case, whatever we need. So you call to those chusim, and I think it's something we don't talk about because, especially in Chabad, everything is about bittul. At least that's the thinking. You know, they say, right? The Breslivers speak all about simcha and they're the most depressed. The Geras speak about emes, truth, and the most false. And Chabad speaks about the most bittul and the biggest baligaiva. So we have the sense of bittul and bittul and bittul, nullification, humility. So I'm going to ask. Well, by the way, the Rebbe already in Tufshin, I think it was 1958, when Purim, when the Rebbe said that he spoke a sicha, and he said that those that want to be blessed with wealth should raise their hand. Very few Hasidim raised their hand, only 3 raised their hand. We know who they are. They're already, one is alive still, I think 2 already passed on. They were blessed with a lot of wealth, that's a fact, okay? And then the Rebbe said, you're Hasidim shaitim. You're foolish Hasidim. Your sense of humility and bittul, and there's 1,000 people in the room, or 300 people, whatever, and people, oh, you raised your hand, you want money. That's what you want, money. Yeah, the Rebbe said there's an opportunity to be blessed with wealth. But sapasnish, it's not befitting. I should raise my hand asking for money. That's so coarse. Yes?
But Rabbi Groner after that came to the Rebbe and asked him, and he says to him, the Rebbe says to him, nobody raised his hand. So Rabbi Groner answered him and said, after you spoke for 2 hours, the problems of being wealthy and the running after money, you are surprised that nobody raised his hand?
Okay.
So it's a dilemma,
It's all the perspective. If you come to a place where you're going to use your wealth for Hashem and for mitzvahs and tzedakah and all that, it's fine. Okay, let's continue. And therefore, when we daven and say Tehillim, Rosh Hashana, we're bringing schus, merit, upon ourselves. Top of 39. These 2 days, listen to this, guys. Besides the fact that you have to be careful, zirus yisera, the Rebbe adds the word yisera, extra special attention. To be careful on these 2 days, it's the day when we accept upon the yoke of God upon ourselves. We need to make precious every hour, v'regan, every moment, liyazkol, sha'oisav, nesunim, l'Hashem betfilah. All your time, Rosh Hashana, you dedicate it to davening, v'torah, and learning, Torah of Amidas Tilim. And here too must be said, Rosh Hashanah is not a time to talk. Learn, daven, eat, sleep, and really, you should work on yourself with the 48 hours, you minimize talking. I try not to talk for the first night. It's hard, because at the table, they need this, they need that, But I was trained that it's a very special time. So, it's not a time, people come to a shul and they see their friends. How you doing, Shalom Aleichem? And what's going on? It's not the time for that. Doesn't mean you should be rude. Someone gives you Shalom Aleichem, you should give him Shalom Aleichem back. You shouldn't be rude. Being rude is against Rosh Hashanah. Be a mensch. But, acknowledge them, and if they want to talk, say, can this wait for after Rosh Hashanah? If it can't wait, if it's really very important, talk, if a person comes over to you and says, I must speak to you, I feel, you should give him all the time in the world on Rosh Hashanah. But if that's not the case, don't do that Rosh Hashanah. Okay? It's not that you should do, it's like some people that they do these type of things, but they're like sour about it. It's sour. The Rebbe says, no, you need to do it b'chayis v'regesh pnimi, with an enthusiasm and an inner feeling kind of joy and happiness that you have an opportunity to worship Hashem on these 2 days in this way. In other words, like this. A person who loves talking. So you tell him this. What am I going to do? Close the gift of the gab. A whole time. What are we going to do? You hang out with your friends. What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
I've got friends that were hanging out in yeshiva.
Yeah.
And they say Tehillim.
Say Tehillim, you learn, you daven, you go blow shofar for other Yidden. So let's say you're going to blow shofar half an hour away to a hospital or nursing home. On the way there, for some people I've seen, they say Tehillim, they walk around saying Tehillim. But, many people don't have that, right? So if someone's going with you, you speak words of Torah. If not, I'm just saying, make it different. Make it different that it's noticeable it's Rosh Hashanah. So when you come and you blow the shofar, you're coming from the perspective of Rosh Hashanah. It's a very, very special perspective. And the Rebbe says, B'chayis v'regesh pnimi. Not b'macht. I can't. When is the 2 days finishing? Vey. You understand? That's not what we're looking for. As we see in actuality, something that's relevant to yourself and to your family. You do it with depth from your essence. When you know that what you're doing now is relevant to the vitality and life of your family, you do it in the best way. For example, someone who has a judgment. You're up for a lot of money. If you lose this case, you're going to have to pay a big fine. Way beyond what you can afford. What you make daily, what you make from your profit, from your business, from your work, you have to give knas, punishment. God forbid if there's yisurim, pain, agony associated with this judgment. The Rebbe says, even worse, because Cain, if it's a einish mavis, if it's death, God forbid. In other words, it's that type of a case. So now he says, wait a second. I'm going before the judge. I did something that I might get a life sentence. I might get a death sentence. But I can now still try to find an excuse. Try to find a way out. And then you realize I'm in deep, hot water. And my family, if they put me away, what's going to be with my family? The person at that moment is ready to say, I'll give anything and everything I have to be redeemed. It says, Nito Kain too tired. There's nothing that's too expensive. In other words, I'm not going to give this, for, if I can get out of this, I'm not going to give this that I own or whatever. Why? Because it's too expensive. No, my life is at stake. Whatever it takes to gain life, I'm going to give. And so Nito Kain too feels, there's nothing that's too much. No one has to tell him, hey, fella, you got something that is very valuable, give it away. No, he knows himself. Every moment is dear. And at that time, he looks to gain support from good advocates. Please, speak well on my behalf. So he's totally immersed with his entire heart, his entire soul, his entire spirit. And he finds all kinds of justifications. No one needs to urge him and nudge him. Come up with a good excuse and a way out and a good argument. Believe me, he's thinking very well himself how to save himself. And he does it with great alacrity, great zrizus, and with great thought. And even though he doesn't know judgment, he comes up with ideas, usvaris, amukis, and deep thoughts, justifying his position. He finds excuses and arguments that the smartest people, harif, sharp, the sharp minds, shrewd minds, they can never come up with such arguments. And by him, it's very emotional. With truthfulness and sincerity. In Yiddish, is very truthful, very serious with truthfulness. This is before. Then when he comes to the judge. When he talks, he gives his argument. And he says, listen, I did make this mistake. And he promises Ne'emana. He says completely, God, judge, in this case, I will never do this again. And he pleads with his case, and in the case of his family, with great tears, coming from his heart. The Chosel, if she because he knows this is relevant to his soul, when the forces to people, or God forbid. This sincerity impacts the judge to be easier in rendering judgment. We'll stop here. I think there's still a few minutes before the Shulchan Aruch time, so review, either go further or review this now, the Maamar, okay?